Let me switch gears to another story that we've been covering a lot on this program this morning. The Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee last night voting to release a secret memo accusing senior FBI officials involved in the Russia probe of misconduct. Now, the president has 5 days to decide if this should be released. What do you think, Congressman? Should this memo see the light of day? Should the public see exactly what was written in that memo?
I believe so. I've read the memo and understand what's going on here. They've been doing their own investigation, and rightfully so. And remember what government is, a separate but co-equal branch. There's a reason why the Intel Committee was created, because you want to check and balance, especially when it comes to what's happening in the CIA, FBI, and others. They uncovered some incidences, so I believe the public should see it. They took the vote to let the members read it first. Then they went and they met with the FBI to make sure nothing in there that shouldn't be, and now they released it. The Democrats never wanted you to see this, and then Adam Schiff comes and says, well, I've got a memo. Well, the members have never read that. They haven't gone to the FBI and others to let them look at the memo and others, and he's really playing politics. He never wanted any memo to come out, and the Republicans are treating them so much better than he would ever treat anybody else. If our role is separate but co-equal, and we have a duty and a responsibility, I think the public should read this.
So the memo is basically showing us what went on at the top of the FBI in terms of abuses. I mean, we know that Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has stepped down. There's an intense amount of scrutiny around that he abruptly left his post yesterday. He faced criticism over campaign contributions for his wife's failed state Senate bid from a longtime friend to the Clintons, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. But, of course, this comes as revelations come out that two top officials, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, sent negative text messages about President Trump. Is that what is basically in this memo?
Can't talk about the memo.
Okay.
Got to let the president decide whether it could be released or not. But what really you could talk about are these texts. Think about this. You have an individual high up in the DOJ. His wife is hired by Fusion just to work on the Russian portion. He withholds that information, is in meetings. Then you have a person, not just an FBI agent, but someone who is intricately a part of investigating Hillary Clinton and in the Mueller investigation. And it was the independent counsel that found this going on between these texts, and they're giving their own personal philosophical beliefs, but they're upset that the president has won. They talk about certain things. Anybody in America should at least take those texts and say, whoa, wait a minute. These two people are in the right place, could actually influence something that goes on, and now you've got all these other investigations. Did they do something to cause it?
Well, thank God for the Inspector General in terms of Michael Horowitz's work, because he's the one who came out with all of this information and these texts to indicate to us what was going on behind the scenes.
Had he not done that, he would still be working in the FBI on the Mueller investigating the president today. It wasn't Mueller who said, oh, I found something to get rid of. It was the Inspector General who found these texts. And it was very interesting how those texts that came on after the election were lost or not being able to be found, but now the DOJ could find them.
So you think that we will see those texts as well? I mean, the idea that these two were talking about an insurance policy, is the insurance policy this whole Russia probe?
You don't know, but does that not at least raise enough doubt that you want to answer that question? Look, it wasn't to me whoever won president. I want my government to be trustworthy. I want my government to be honest. I want my government to be open. So whoever did this, regardless of the outcome, I don't want people in certain high places. There are some great individuals at DOJ and the FBI. Few individuals should not taint it, but they are in a position of power to actually change the outcome.
It sounds like they abused that power.
Yes.
Congressman, it's good to see you.